So it is 7:02. And we'll get this meeting started. Happy Valentine's Day. So just a quick review of the agenda. We'll open it up for public comment as we usually do. And then hopefully Chuck will be here and we can interview a prospective new member to the Affordable Housing Committee. Our job tonight is, and you all have been through the process, is to interview Chuck, and then we'll vote on a recommendation to the select board that he be appointed. And then Chuck and I and anyone else is welcome to attend the select board meeting, and the select board will have the final say. Next, we will review the housing target resolution, followed by discussing public outreach generally, but specifically talking about tabling a town meeting, which was March 7th, as well as our housing meeting work session that we're hosting with the planning commission for the town plan. And then that'll kind of segue nicely into some PC updates, kind of take home messages from the land use meeting that they had last week, and just kind of an update on plans for changes on zoning that kind of Susan and I are thinking work plan over the next few months. And then some other business, which will just include some dates to be aware of and events to attend, kind of a thing. We've got our December and January minutes to approve. We'll discuss the agenda for that March 14th meeting, but it will primarily be taken up by the work session for the planning commission. And then we will adjourn. Since Chuck isn't here yet, but I do think being in person will be nice. Let's, if you all don't mind, can we move to approving the December and January minutes? The December minutes, this was from our December 13 meeting. Does anyone have any edits or comments on those minutes? I had one edit, which was on page 1, 2, 3. On page 3, the town regulations define affordable as anything below 100% of Chittenden County median income, and we've been using a range of below 80% as affordable and between 80% and 120% as missing middle. All right, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I can second.
Excellent. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and then similarly, the January minutes. I had 2 edits. One was on the second page. The heading is the November heading, so just updating that to January. And the other edit from the first page, the minutes say that 60% of Jericho housing is in the 80% to 120% median income range. And that should be more than 50% is below the 120 median income range. There were a lot of numbers flying around in that discussion, but okay, so anything else on those? Okay, do I have a motion to approve January's minutes?
I was not here, so.
I have to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Awesome. All right, so public comment. Bernie, would you like to share anything for public comment, or are you just here to
Well, I'm here mostly to listen to the meeting, but I do have a question that it's probably not the right venue. It's probably a zoning question, but I'll just share it anyway. Somebody passed this idea by me, and I thought it was at least interesting to think about. With frequent discussions about encouraging multifamily, multi-story residential developments and close to services and such that we've been many of us have been having. The hitch seems to me keep coming down to how do the encouragement actually happen? I mean, you can do lots of things with regulations, but somebody still has to come in and do the building, right? We seems to keep getting stuck on that point. So this thought that came out is explaining to me that, or I guess I'm asking, would like to ask somebody if it's even a legality or a way, if there's a way to put this kind of process in place, and that is to not have not minimum lot sizes, but instead have single family. Instead of having minimum lot sizes on single family occupancy, instead have maximum lot sizes and graduated tax rates inversely proportional to occupancy. Because if I keep thinking about what's our real goal, a piece of that, at least some people's discussion, is to get better use of the land and the infrastructure, right? All the materials that we're putting into buildings. It's really a story of getting more people into the most energy efficient building. And of course, we have the discussion that a lot of us are down to 1 or 2 people in the house. We have a big house. We can't figure out a way to move into a smaller unit, that kind of thing. So I was wondering if this is an idea to pursue at all as one of the many considerations, or if it's even something that could be legally done, even if we wanted to do it, kind of thing. But it seems like it ties the carrot and the stick approach that we talk about. It seems like it's more direct to what at least some people feel like would be a good goal. Anyway, just a thought. I didn't expect necessarily an answer, but I thought it was an interesting idea, at least. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know anything about taxing, tax policy, and what can be done, can't be done along those lines.
I'm not an expert on it either, so I don't believe you can tax property that's residential based on the number of occupants in there. And your property taxes are based on the assessed value of your house, which is presumably related to the market value at some level or another. But there are discounts. There's a Homestead Act that gives you additional funds back on your taxes in the state of Vermont. There are a few other tax abatement programs in place, but those are income sensitive, not number of people living in the house sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know. So
Are multifamily dwellings, condos attached, are those taxed differently?
it's based on the assessed value of that particular condo.
Yeah. Well, no answers tonight, Bernie, but I think it's something that we can certainly look into.
We could, it is more of a zoning question that if zoning were to increase density allowances, that might lead to some investors or builders deciding to build it. But I think we already offer stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank
sorry,
you.
I wish we had a better answer for you, Bernie.
No, I didn't really expect an answer. It's more of a discussion point, and find the right people. But I just thought it was an interesting way of approaching that I hadn't heard of that approach before.
Yeah. All right. Hi, Wayne. Can you hear us? Happy Valentine's Day, Wayne. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item number 3. And thank you all for being flexible there. It's 7:13. So I think this is interviewing Chuck Lacey. I don't know if all of you in this room have met Chuck, but I'm sure all of us have probably heard Chuck talk about housing and a lot of these issues. So I'm excited that you're interested in joining the committee. I'd love to hear maybe and introduce yourself to us in terms of how you got interested in housing, what kind of background or projects are you working on that are housing related, and maybe also just as a question, why join now?
The reason I'm interested, I felt like I was really kind of on my own in terms of voicing concern about housing in Jericho. And I felt the town just simply wasn't interested, and the leadership in the town, I think is more interested. I don't believe it has the courage really to go ahead, but I think things have changed now. I think that we have 1, maybe 2 select board members who are interested in doing something. I'm very happy with the current leadership on the planning commission. I think that there's a solid core of people there who are ready to do something. I think SJ, your leadership of this committee, I feel like it's a good time to, bring the energy, my energy, kind of on the, kind of more on a committee as opposed to being kind of a voice from the outside. So again, I also, I bring, I think a point of view that's a little bit different. But I think the town is ready to at least, I think the town is ready to make an attempt at making some improvements, and I feel like I can help with that. I see this committee playing an advocacy role, but I think it's also, playing a figuring it out role. When before I felt the only thing that was really available to me was advocacy, because there really wasn't any particular interest on the part of the town itself. So I think that's why now. I think the thing that whatever little things motivate me. I mean, I live in the rental district in Jericho Center. I have an apartment. I built a house for my mother in addition to that, and live next to an apartment house that has 5 apartments, and there's a couple ADUs across the street. But so I talk to people who rent, who are renting in Jericho, and there's one fellow, a couple lives next door, who live in rent an apartment that's about the size of my kitchen, which is not large. They pay $1,300 a month. He is a quite skilled carpenter, who, as he describes it, builds high-end houses for wealthy people, and lives in this little apartment. And he and his partner's dream is to get a little piece of land and build a duplex, and to use that and build it himself, and had family and friends and his brothers to help him, and to help have the duplex help pay the rent, and that's how they would get their start in life. And Jericho has spent 50 years making sure that dream is basically impossible. The move a year ago, just now, to loosen up a little bit on zoning was the first thing that I can find in the records. I've read all the town plans, all the zoning regulations. I'm working way through the minutes and the planning commission minutes. The first positive step I've seen to make housing, intentionally make housing, a little more feasible for those folks. But it's still basically, I'm looking at the guy and basically, yeah, it's impossible. Your dream is impossible. Jericho is not unique. It's true of 100 100,000 other towns. In many respects, the housing restrictions are like the boomers' last. Whatever. Do we have any more selfish acts in us that is going to steal opportunity and possibility from younger people? I don't know. But this is like baby boomers' gift to the previous generations, is the inability to, to find housing. One of the things that concerns me about many of the approaches being discussed broadly kind of across the country is there's still a desire to control low and middle income people and make decisions about where they should live. I believe people of almost all income, and we should definitely be building housing we should be building housing, but in general, the language is still about controlling where people live and how they live. We picture building houses for people rather than really valuing the origin stories that people have coming to a community. My wife and I bought a place 35 years ago. It was a dump, but it was ours. And we were young, and we fixed it up. There are some of the people who are legendary Jericho residents are people who bought a piece of little land and built a little house and kind of, just kind of added on to it. And they have been here for 50 or 60 years, and the whole arc of their life, where they maybe found a partner or started out with a partner and, raised some kids and were involved, had very civic moments in the course of the 50 years where they got interested in the thing that was relevant to their life at one time, and lived sort of complete lives here. I've seen the opportunity for multi-generational families in Jericho to really kind of evaporate. But those sort of story arcs in terms of the character of Jericho is not just aesthetic. It's sort of like who lives here and their relationship with the town. And I think the relationship with the town, the idea of this couple next door getting a little piece of land, a quarter acre, an eighth of an acre, building a duplex and starting out in life, to me, that is an origin story in which they are attached to the town and the future of the town, as opposed to someone saying, well, yeah, I got to Jericho because I was income qualified, for something that the government built for me. Now, we should be building income qualified housing, but I think the view should not be that that's like the solution. We need to be looking for solutions in which the vast majority of people can use their ingenuity and their resources to create their own origin stories and be able to choose kind of where they live. When I think about, Jericho and 100,000 other towns that behave like us, it's like we've all had this experience of getting on a train and all the aisle seats are filled by people that are pretending to be asleep. Because they don't want to sit with anybody. And, it's totally legitimate to be asleep. I've been on a train, we're just stopping and, I'm asleep, and that's kind of how housing is working right now. And we, instead of pursuing housing policy, and Jericho was extremely specific about this in 1970. We are here to increase we're doing this to increase our property values and to increase the quality of the housing that's here. It was happening at a time when the hotels in Burlington were still segregated, when the resorts in Vermont were still segregated. It was a time when Vermont refused fair housing was not an accepted concept in Vermont at the time. Vermont never passed fair housing laws. Fair housing only came to Vermont after Martin Luther King died, and the bill was passed in 1968. And we established laws for the benefit of people here, and they haven't changed in 50 years. And I just think it's time for us to, if we're sitting in the aisle seat, pretending to be asleep, it's time for us to take the coat off our face, recognize that people got to live somewhere, and move over and give them a seat.
So
And that's what motivates me.
I'll stop you there. For committee members, I'd love it if you could go around and just introduce yourself to Chuck. maybe what you're working on in affordable housing or something that you're interested in, or if you've got a question for Chuck, we've got about 10 minutes.
Also, just partners and rehabbed 22 units of housing in Springfield, Vermont, all of whom have rent of under $900, including utilities. And I'm currently renovating apartments in Chester, Pennsylvania, all of whom are under $1,100 a month, not including utilities.
Wayne, do you want to start just with an introduction and a question if you've got one for Chuck?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'm Wayne Ellis. I've lived here since 78, bought a house, an affordable house in 1983, when we used to do that regularly. And then built another house over on the south end of Jericho. The interesting thing is that by that time, we moved here in 87, that the builders that were building affordable houses were leaving because IBM was downsizing. And so you wouldn't be able to build little classical neighborhoods with the small house in the front. SJ, I took you on the tour of my old neighborhood there. So that was something that was disappearing, and this builder told me I can't get people to work for me anymore because they're all going to the guys building the big houses. So he ended up moving to Florida, and some of
I couldn't hear the last couple of sentences.
Oh, so I said the guy that built my house in 1987 ended up leaving Vermont because by that time it was out that IBM was downsizing and all you could buy was big houses. So he and much of his crew moved to Florida. And so that's the point that I'm wanted to make, was that we have a dearth of people that will build small houses nowadays because you know, there isn't the kind of growth. So I guess the question is, we can talk about building small houses, but who do we get to do those? Do we have to grow our own builders, go find people and get them training and certifications and all that? I mean, how would we do that?
I don't claim to have all the answers, but I know there's a young man next door that would like to build his own, and right now he can't because he can't find. We have zoned out his ambition. The second thing is, I feel like the first step is, right now it's illegal, so let's make it legal. Okay, right now, you can, for any zoning district in Jericho, except for the commercial district, you can walk into town hall and get a permit to build a 60,000 square foot house. You just have to have, you can have one, it can be a 1-bedroom, 60,000 square foot house. You just have to have the septic and the proper setback. In the preponderance of Jericho, on that same lot, it's illegal to build a 1,500 square foot triplex.
So is that something that's illegal now? Because I thought that we've been rewriting the
No,
zoning.
it's illegal now. If you look at the zoning the zoning that was passed this past year, they have permitted now duplexes in every district, but in 70% of the land area, after you take out the range and the park, in 70% of the land area, the most you can build is a duplex. There is no conditional use, no permitting, no nothing beyond 2 units. Today, right now, that 60,000 square foot house has smaller impact fees than a 1,500 square foot triplex would have if it was built on that same lot. We have a mindset in Vermont even when we're trying to build something in the village centers, people in the village centers oppose it. Just how many years ago there was an attempt to build a triplex and a duplex right next to my place. Neighbors came out and opposed it, out of not in character.
So I'm going to move us.
I think
move
it's.
us along.
I think the first answer to the question is, let's make it legal, and it's happening. It's happening in other towns. I mean, it's happening in Essex. It's happening in Cambridge. It's happening in Fairfax. Our school district has lost 1,000 students. We have 40% fewer elementary school students in Jericho and Underhill than we had. Fairfax just passed a bond to expand their high school. We've lost more students than they have in their entire district.
So Richard,
South
if you'd
Burlington
like
has to expand their high school. They're building housing.
You want to introduce yourself,
Okay.
Richard?
Sure. Richard Hankins, I've been on the board here for the committee for about a year. I'm still rather new to the area here. Almost coming up on 2 years, but you know, it sounds like you got a real passion for everything. You know, I look forward to, you know, getting the opportunity to work with you on some different things and be able to see what your drive and your passion can do to help us out.
Stacey?
Hi, I'm Stacy Burnett. I'm a social worker, so I'm into trying to help people that don't have things, which is kind of what attracted me to this committee. So, you know, going to the housing conference, that was kind of my focus was, you know, what are the realities of housing for people in Vermont and people in Jericho and differences for BIPOC folks versus white folks and just things like that. So I'm always kind of digging around to kind of understand more of that dynamic. But yeah, I feel like you've provided lots of information about yourself. And so I look
Well,
forward
one of the big issues in Jericho, I mean, one of the big issues is that families that stay together because of housing that shouldn't stay together.
Mm,
And then parents who don't stay together want to be able to have each of them and the children all live in the same school district.
Yeah.
And it's extremely disruptive to family life because right now it takes 2 people to live in an apartment the size of my kitchen.
mhm,
If they can't break up, even if they should,
yeah,
if there's abuse or some other reason, they have to stay together.
mhm,
You know, that's awful. You know, I have a good friend who has 3 children, just had a third, was on the school board. And his parents would love to come live near here and help take care of the children. I mean, we have lost so much of our childcare with the disruption of the potential for multi-generational families. I mean, that used to be the great Jericho families. There were like in every part of town, there was a multi-generational family where people were able to look after each other and each other's families. And that's in 35 years, that's gone. I mean, Wayne, you've probably seen this. I mean, the children of the great families don't live here.
Eric?
Hi, Chuck. We know each other from
Okay.
many years back. To answer the question, why am I on the Affordable Housing Committee?
Mhm.
As a member of the Planning Commission, I have seen what bad planning does. And I have seen how it does impact where people can live and where people choose to live. Affordable housing is something that I think and support in Jericho. I have a equal vociferity towards making sure the affordable housing is not spread hither and yon where no services are,
mm,
to make sure that it's put in places where it's appropriate in terms of services, in terms of sewage, in terms of density. I drive along Skunk Hollow Road and I think, what would that look like if there was a 5-unit subdivision right there? If the view would be gone. We're in the right places, we need it. We need a lot of it. My own children can't afford to live here. They found a place out in Colchester. It's close enough, but it's not the same thing. Because there aren't enough houses here, full stop. So to me, affordable housing is part of the overall solution to getting more housing of a diverse stock for income diversity in Jericho. Jericho is not terribly income diverse right now.
Jericho Elementary School is the richest school in Vermont. It's the lowest number of children on free and reduced lunch in Jericho Elementary School of any school in Vermont. So we went from a cow town to having the richest school in 2 generations, and it was zoning that did it.
All right, it is 7:32. I'm trying to keep us on track
Wayne's got a
for,
question there.
oh, go ahead, Wayne.
So Chuck, I just have a question then. So to echo what, what Eric was saying, and
I want to say to both of you, 2 minutes.
okay, to echo what Eric said, and I agree with what he said. So, part of what we've been looking at is to put, denser housing into the growth centers with some engineering on water and septic. Is that something that interests you? Is that where you see a path forward for this?
I can't answer. Yes, although that was the plan 50 years ago. And I no longer trust, there's no reason for people in Jericho to trust that that's going to happen. So that has been, and we are no closer than we were 50 years ago. There have been times when we have been this close and had this intention before. And I don't think we have the government in Jericho that can do that. And so when we sort of survey the field out there, we can't look at what Heinsberg is doing, and we can't look at what Richmond's doing, and we can't look at what St. Albans doing. We have to look at what's possible given the decision that we've made about our town structure. If we say, okay, we are going to have some administrative capacity to be able to do that, and some recognition for the fact that in 70% of Jericho, home prices and land have been artificially inflated, they are going to have to make a financial commitment to making the water and the sewer happen. I'm not saying that there should be houses willy-nilly everywhere. But we do need to move over in the seat and figure out how to make it happen, given the government that we do have. But right now we keep proposing plans that are impossible with the current government, and using that as a justification for restricting, basically shutting down the majority of town. So I'm all in favor of that, and we should all be working towards that. In the meantime, it's like we have a crisis, and we have to figure out where people can live. For example, if you look at Lafayette Drive, that's 26 houses on 10 acres. That's about the same number of houses as in Jericho Center. So you can build village centers that are dense. You don't have to like squeeze them in between. I built an infill. I built an infill house, and I was opposed at I was a war with the town of Jericho to get it done. So I'm in favor of building up the density in the village centers, but let's not make that the plan unless we have a greater deal of confidence that it's going to happen. Right now, I feel like it needs to be on a parallel track. Okay, we're going to do that. It's a little bit of a show me situation. And we're also going to have to say, where you can put a 60,000 square foot house, it's okay to put a fourplex. That's 3,000 square feet.
Do I have a motion?
I've farmed on Skunk Hollow. I've farmed on Nashville Road. I've farmed on Route 117. I've farmed on Shillhammer Road. I've farmed on all these roads. And I've been there with my cows looking at select board members' houses who were saying, my house can't be a triplex because it's going to hurt Chuck's farm. And I don't believe it then, and I don't believe it now.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to recommend Chuck to the Affordable Housing Committee?
I'll move to recommend him.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, everybody, we are moving on. The next agenda item, sorry, you're getting all bits of my screen here, is reviewing the target resolution. So Wayne, Bernie, can you see that? There you are.
Yeah, it looks great to me.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Minimize
Thank
the.
Oh, thank you.
See
Yeah.
more of it, folks. Thank you.
Okay, so I sent this to all of you to review, so you've seen this. I'm gonna go through, this was really distilling down 3 months of discussion. And so this is where we've landed. Tonight, I'm just gonna remind you of how we got to here. And give you kind of the big picture context of all of the information that we went through to make these decisions, so that then at the end of this, we can go through and make some final decisions about targets, specifically about timeline, about how we're identifying and defining targets, what should be included, what shouldn't be included. And I think we really tried to balance proportions and hard numbers, thinking about what healthy diversity should look like for Jericho, while also kind of including some concrete targets, especially for the most disadvantaged kind of housing groups. So the first thing was the timeline. We hadn't decided on a timeline. We were batting around either 5 years or 10 years. The 5 years timeline would be 2024 to 28. 10 years would be to 2032, or we can tweak that if we need to. Understanding that amending some minor zoning regs will take about a year. Doing a more intensive overhaul will take at least 2 years. The new town plan will be adopted in 2024, and that can go for at most 8 years. There was some talk in the group about trying to line that up with town plan goals. Building homes together, if you remember, that's the Chittenden County set of goals from the Planning Commission, Champlain Housing Trust, Evernorth, a bunch of other people have signed on. Those have been in 5-year increments, so 1.0, and now we're in 2.0, which is 2021 to 2025. So they've chosen a 5-year goals, and then at the end of the 5 years, kind of taking a look and either setting new goals or checking.
SJ, do you know for 1.0 and 2.0, how close did they come to hitting their goals?
We're in the middle of 2.0, so don't know. 1.0, they came, I can't remember. Off the
They
top
hit
of
the,
my
they
head,
hit the 300, they hit the number,
but perpetually
but
affordable.
yeah, the perpetually affordable one they didn't hit, but the total number of units they did hit.
And then in the assessment that they did at the end of that, they realized that they needed to go even bigger with 2.0 than they had with 1.0.
Okay.
And I don't have any information other than that the state is considering, I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to Montpelier, but the state is also considering setting targets, but I don't know what the timeline for those are. So
I have a question, SJ. So again, these Chittenden County numbers are relative to people who already have town water and town wastewater. So, our known.
The Chittenden County numbers are for the county as a whole, which
Right.
include places that don't have water and wastewater. And the goal is to focus development in village centers, and the expectation is not that every town, represents a fifth of the, if there are 5 towns in Chittenden County, they're not going to expect some of the outer towns to take on a fifth when Burlington, South Burlington, Winooski is densely populated.
Okay, I just wanted to make the point that, all that, and if you look in all their regulations, they say you get your density bonus, but you have to hook to our pipes, which are pre-existing. For us, our known unknown is we don't have that. And our unknown unknown is we don't know what capacity each development site we pick will have for water or septic. So I just, I understand that Chittenden County is saying this, but again, we have to keep in the back of our mind that we're a small town that doesn't have the facilities and infrastructure that these other guys setting the agenda have.
Absolutely, and that's why we're setting our own and not just looking to the CCRPC or the state to tell us what to do here. But it is, I think that what building homes together, one reason to reference it is for context. The other is to make the argument that setting targets is useful. And third, that this is a priority of the county and the state. And so that speaks to feasibility, where we don't necessarily have to come up with all of the solutions about how to make this happen. The county and the state are providing lots of programs and resources to try to help us solve that problem. And so we have an obligation as part of the community, part of the county, to participate in this. And to make sure that you're absolutely right, Wayne, that the growth that's happening in Jericho is the kind of growth that we want to see for Jericho. So moving on to target rate. So we indirectly discussed this a while ago. Setting a target rate or a target total number of houses or new residential units within a timeline. On the left, this is just a chart of some of the kind of reference points that we've talked about in terms of growth rate, what Jericho has done in the past 20 years. We've hovered around 10 to 11 new residential units a year. Building homes 1.0 and that first push by the Regional Planning Commission, we represented about 1.4% of those new residential units, which was about 14 homes a year or 70 homes total if we bump it up to their 5,000 goal. If we maintain the growth rate, so we've talked about how the growth rate in the last couple of years has doubled what we've seen in the last decade to be about 20 homes a year. If we maintained that, that would be 100 homes in 5 years or 200 homes in 10 years.
Did Wayne say he built his house in 1977?
I think he said 87.
87.
87, okay.
Um,
So in the, well, it was 1977 was 59 houses. I mean, we had years when there was 70 new houses.
Jericho represents about 3% of Chittenden County households. So if you wanted to think about the Building Homes Together 2.0 goal of 5,000, 3% of 5,000 would be 150 homes in 5 years. If we wanted to be more ambitious, 5% of that 5,000 goal would be 250 homes in 5 years. To kind of speak to what, and again, this is numbers that we've seen before, but just to try and help place you in context as we look at where we ended up. This is what Jericho's growth rate in units per average units per year over the last few decades has looked like. So in the 60s, it was an average of about 18 units a year. In the 70s, we were at 40. In the 80s, we were at 30, 90s, 26, 2000s, 2010s, we were at about 10 units a year. And in terms of what the 2020s could look like, that's what we're talking about now. So what's the resolution that's in front of you is at roughly 30 new units a year, which would be on our 10-year timeline would be 300 new units by 2032. If we choose a 5-year timeline, that would be 150 new units by 2028.
So,
Go ahead, Wayne.
okay, I was going to say a 10-year because we don't have the infrastructure, that maybe 10-year might be better, because if you set 5 years, it might be slow in getting started. But then catch up afterwards. I'm just trying to think of how would this look actually unfolding? And we are at a disadvantage because every place we develop something, it has to come up with its water and septic solutions. And
Yep.
that's going to take some time, as opposed to everybody else very close to us. It just says, here's the pipe, hook up to it. That provides, I think, a little bit of upfront planning acceleration and building acceleration that we have to try to overcome.
Yeah,
Something that I would add to that is if you look at the DRB permitting pieces that they have, there's about, my numbers are right, there's about 35 units that are on the books in Jericho that have approval that are going to be built. I doubt any of them will be under the affordable rubric. But I also question whether that is a sustainable number of builds in a state with a declining population in every county except Chittenden, in a state with a rapidly aging population who are going to be, in the not too distant future, moving out of many of their houses. I question that there will be a lot of new builds as opposed to people selling the houses they're in and moving somewhere else. So that's, it seems perhaps a little ambitious to say 30 a year, when we, up until COVID, we were running 10, 15, if that. COVID changed things. COVID's over. Is it still going to persist? I wonder about that.
that argues to me a 5-year. A 5-year timeline. But I hear what you're saying, Wayne, about putting in infrastructure is going to take some time. And how heavily do we need to rely on infrastructure to see some of the growth that we want? And I will briefly argue that infrastructure wasn't there in the 70s, 80s. Either.
I would question that because Jericho East was built in that time frame. They had their own water system and sewer system put in place. Foothills was built in that time. Same thing, water and sewer in that
They
place.
built their own.
They built their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were able to do that.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we could do
exactly.
that.
Like
The
that could
developer
happen,
did
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And
And it was a lot easier to put in water and sewer in the 70s and 80s than it is now. The restrictions on where you can put a sewer plant are a lot different.
Mhm.
I think there's also a lot of people leaving Vermont because we don't have housing.
Absolutely. My mother just spent 2 days in the ER because they didn't have staff for her to go up to the neurology floor. And I went for a walk with a nurse who's retiring right now and said, yes, new nurses aren't coming here and they're leaving because they can't afford to live here.
So there was a lot of conversation over the last few months about different things that we really wanted to highlight, draw attention to, make sure that we prioritized. You saw in the resolution how Wayne and I tried to handle that. I may have missed a couple of things. We can talk about that. We can talk about reorganizing things. This is the list. And again, just to reference you to a bunch of the context and for the conversations that we had, the figures on the screen do kind of both things. On the one hand, show that there's a precedence for diverse housing in Jericho. We've got 16% of residential units or something other than a single family detached building. We've got 20% of occupied residential units are small, defined as 2 or fewer bedrooms. I just learned that Jericho, the 11% of housing units in Jericho are rental, and that number has been the same since the 70s. I just learned that today, which is
It'd be
interesting.
interesting to know
That is
when,
interesting.
I don't know if that's 60% of the units or the buildings. I think it might be the units. When were they built?
Mm,
And a lot of them are built in places where they would be illegal to build now.
mm. So these figures on the one hand show that there is a precedence for this kind of housing in Jericho. So it's not like we're bringing in something that is totally new. And on the other hand, we don't have enough of it.
But it also shows, and that's interesting, that 11% is what it was in 4 decades, which means the rate of rental housing is keeping pace with the rate of all housing being built in Jericho. Otherwise, it would have been declining.
True.
So that's a very good indication that rental is a legitimate possibility in Jericho.
Yeah, that's what Front Porch Forum says.
It's I have a whole bunch of pages of
11% may not be enough,
forum.
but it is growing at the same rate that the housing is growing.
Yeah.
But
So
not at the same rate that, I would argue, not at the same rate that the need is growing,
No,
but
For sure.
that's true of the housing in Jericho as well.
Yeah.
true. Okay, so where we ended up in this conversation, we talked about wanting to both look at, include in the targets both percentages so that there could still be success even if the rate of development declined due to some unforeseen whatever, but also some kind of hard numbers to be able to measure against. We talked about wanting to make sure that we were talking about a wide range of housing and not just perpetually affordable, which is what Building Homes Together is talking about, because Jericho needs that wide range. And we've seen that although we've seen a doubling in growth, doubling in the rate of new homes being constructed, none of them are missing middle. None of them are affordable to the middle or low income.
And the population's not going up.
So we came at this a number of different ways, and I just boiled it down to our kind of estimation using the grand list to get us some context of what housing stock looks like. And that's where we got to our 20% low and 30% middle numbers. Again, in terms of thinking about these goals and whether or not they're feasible, there is a huge focus on missing middle in the state right now, and creating programs and incentives and toolkits for affordable housing committees and programs to hand to select boards to help them figure out how to make this this kind of housing available. And I think a lot of those things will apply to low-income housing. And again, this is just in today's dollars, we're talking about for low-income houses that are less than 300,000 or around that 300,000 mark. We're not talking about perpetually affordable yet. And I just put up here the numbers for both either the 5-year or the 10-year goal, depending on which way we want to go. We did want to talk about some very specific targets for perpetually affordable. And then we didn't, I don't remember us talking about specific targets for senior housing, but I know that, or age restricted. I know that that's a big concern for a lot of folks in Jericho, and there's a lot of talk about that. So I included it for us to consider tonight. On the perpetually affordable side, I think it's important that this not just be perpetually affordable ownership, but also include rentals. I'm not sure, other than the age restricted Jerry Hill, I'm not sure of any perpetually affordable rentals here. But we do have 5 shared equity homes with Champlain Housing Trust in Jericho currently. Richmond added 4 of these in 2016 to 2020. And Underhill with the Harvest Crossing are expecting to add 7 to 10 of these in Underhill. So I think that 10 over 10 years is a reasonable number. We can talk about that more, but that's where that number kind of came from. Also, it's worth noting that the select board acting through the Community Development Corps is really interested in doing a project or 2 like this of creating perpetually affordable housing. In terms of age restricted units, Jerry Hill is what we currently have. That's 24 units of perpetually affordable. I know that Cathedral Square is not interested in doing another big kind of development like that. They're the ones that own and run Jerry Hill. But there is a really big need for age restricted units. Wisdom House, if you've been listening to any planning commission meetings or any of the local meetings, Wisdom House is a group that's interested in doing some mixed use and age restricted housing in Riverside on the Tetro property. So if we wanted to set a target there, I think it would be one way to get the select board to commit to prioritizing whether it's that project or just age restricted housing in general. It's worth considering. Okay, so this is the language. I think this language here is the 5-year. So I'm going to stop talking and let you all do some talking, and I will listen.
It's well written. It expresses what we've said in our past meetings. It's a very clear set of goals and objectives for the select board to approve. And it is something that has defined targets to meet. I'm very happy we have 30% or 20% or. As I'm suggesting, I suspect our growth in new builds are going to be going down rather than up.
Yeah.
And if we can still get 30% on that, it'll be a huge for the town. So I don't have any changes to make to it. Amazingly enough.
What do you, I'm not asking you necessarily to speak on behalf of the planning commission. This will go in front. So the plan is for us to discuss this tonight, nail down what we want to suggest to the planning commission. They will then take a look at it, and I will pitch it to them and try and sell them on it. But they'll take a look at it and they may offer some suggestions or tweaks. The idea being that we will present this jointly so that it has the power of both the planning commission and the AHC behind it. I also think that the planning commission will consider including this in the new town plan as part of their goals. So do you, put your planning commission hat on, is there anything there from a PC perspective that we should be thinking about?
From a PC perspective, the element that I would like to see in there is identification of where some of those, particularly the multifamily mixed use dwellings, would be located. We can put new dwelling units anywhere anywhere in the town, affordable, all of those, but when we're looking at 30 units, 45 missing middle units, where do they go? Are they scattered hither and yon, or are they going to be? Do we think they should be in one place versus another? Because the town has a mandate from the state to concentrate development in the village centers.
Mhm.
We're not very good at doing that.
2032
Yeah,
for
that I was
the
gonna
new
say, too.
affordable units.
Oh.
Is that supposed to be.
Yeah, this was just
28.
me trying to show
Okay.
you so that you guys didn't have to do quick math in your head. Although it's pretty simple. But it turns out that it's not helpful if I don't offer that for you.
I'm kind of interested in Wayne's point about 10 years. I think if it was 30 units, well, first of all, 30 units is a commitment to incrementalism. So let's just recognize that it's an incremental ambition. It's not. I don't think it's responsive to the need, but it's an incremental. But it could be that, I mean, there are a lot of houses that could be built in places that people would be comfortable with right now with zoning changes. I don't know if it's 300,
Mhm.
but it could be that those houses get built now. But that there's pressure on the fact that the commitment on the second 5 years is not going to be met without water and sewer. Then I think it's like a real, I mean, we've had town plans forever. We never meet them. And it's always like, whoops, well, and I think like a longer horizon with different strategies for different parts of that 10 years, that the early part of it could be met with zoning changes and attitude changes and educating the public about what's possible on their property. I mean, I spoke today with someone who really didn't know what she could do on her property. That with the zoning changes that the select board made, she can now do more on her property than she thought possible. And that can carry for 5 years, but it's like the fuse is lit to make that goal over the 10 years. There is going to be water and sewer, but it's not going to be done in the next 3 or 4 years to meet any. We can meet a 5-year goal without doing water and sewer. I don't think we can meet a 10-year goal without doing water and sewer.
Well, I kind of like the idea of a 5-year goal that I feel like a 10-year goal is so far ahead.
No, but it's still 30 units a year. It's a 10-year plan, 30 units a year for 10 years, if that's what Wayne was saying. I don't.
10 years is such a long time span that it feels a little bit like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a goal. It doesn't feel like we're keeping momentum. I feel like a 5-year goal that at the end of 5 years, it's still people who on the planning commission, maybe not my neighbors, but people will still remember that this conversation happened. In 5 years, we can assess where we're at. Maybe this first 5 years is incremental, but at that 5-year point, it will be important to be able to say, we've met some of this goal, to keep momentum going, to pat ourselves on the back and also say, hey, there's still more that we need to do. Now that we've got this great wastewater feasibility study and maybe we've identified where the infrastructure goes, the next 5 years, we're going to do this, that, or the other thing. The other thing is that though it is incremental, to your point, Eric, I think that right now we're at 20 units a year with us not lifting a finger doing anything. We've got a planning commission and a select board that's interested in really engaging in this topic and trying to do some things. And we've got regional folks and state folks trying to create programs to help us do this. So if the market continues at 20 or starts to tank, but we come in with 10 more, 15 more units on top of whatever would happen if we didn't do anything. That's really what we're talking about. And those are the units that we're going to make the middle and low income on top of the 20 that's happening anyway without us lifting a finger.
The other piece I've always noted that if it wasn't for the last minute, nothing would ever get done.
Yes.
Putting this in a last minute being closer creates an urgency. 10 years,
Mhm.
10 years, and 10 years ago, my kids were living at home. 5 years, that's something I have to start doing things now. People procrastinate by nature. And I like a 5-year because it puts pressure on.
I feel like it'll be like, okay, well, we'll do the missing middle and then we'll put off this like lower income stuff till, you know, because people won't like that.
Let's put off the
Until,
hard stuff.
yeah, until what, like 8 years from now, where people be like, what was the original
How do we create a
conversation, you know?
How do we,
Wayne raised
how do we create a situation where select board members have not made progress on water and sewer in 3 years? They should be impeached. Like, how do you create that environment?
Wayne, go ahead.
So I was gonna say that, I understand what you're saying about the 5 years, but I can just tell you from my experience in the semiconductor industry, I'm on a project now that is supposed to be done in 6 weeks, but the critical people weren't provided until early December, and it was supposed to have started last March. So now it's at the point where management's looking for who to blame. So that's why I'm thinking if it was 10 years with, as Chuck points out, it takes so long to get things moving. And on top of that, not only people in our government, but you got to get the engineers that will do the engineering and stuff. So, but at the same time, if we, like you said, go to some easier to implement portion of the plan and say, now we'll set it at 5 years, that seems reasonable. But I was just thinking 10 years so that, we had time, because it's already, we're partway through 2023, and it's going to take a year before anything really starts moving and someone's really ready to put a pencil to a paper on planning a water and septic system for some development.
What if the committee would just say it's 150 units in 5 years without water and sewer, and that water and sewer needs to be ready to go in 5 years? Like that is the, so that you eliminate the fact that people are going to want to just say, well, we're not going to do anything till we get water and sewer. We say, no, this is what we're going to do in the next 5 years, and water and sewer has to be ready to go no later than 5 years.
Taking Chuck's suggestion, I would rephrase that an additional goal, which we do not have in here, which is not related to dwelling unit construction, but rather is that within 5 years, municipal water and sewer is available in the village centers. That's the condition for growth that we have to have.
Does that meet that meets my objective?
I think that sounds very reasonable. Yeah.
I mean, we have a select board member who's been for 17 years. This has been on the agenda. And there's like no accountability for that.
Do I have a motion to approve what's on the screen?
I will move to approve what's on the screen.
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, everybody. So I will present this to the Planning Commission on Thursday, the 21st. No, Tuesday. Sorry,
Tuesday next week is.
Tuesday. Yeah.
21st is Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I will present this to the Planning Commission on Tuesday, the 21st. And I'll keep you up to date on where that's at.
You'll probably get at least one vote in favor of it.
I really think it's up to the planning commission to do the work on where, the necessary zoning work, and then it's up to ultimately the select board is accountable for that. I mean, I think what's happened in the past is you kind of start with a land use view, and then that prevents really an establishment of a goal. What's happening now is that the town is saying, here's the goal. Planning commission needs to figure it out and get it to a point where the select board can approve it and accept accountability for it.
Wayne, it's 8:11. We're moving on. Public outreach table at town meeting. Okay, so we are gonna have a table at the town meeting on March 7th. I realize that it is a Tuesday and it is during work hours. If some of you are available during the day to take a shift, help set up, help take down, or take a shift at the table, please reach out and let me know. I think what I'm hoping to discuss tonight is a couple of things, the kind of information that we want to provide. We can print up some posters to post on the wall behind us, or some, like a high school science fair. But we can come up with some information to, share with the public. I've reached out to Home Share Vermont and a couple of other places to get some of their kind of promotional materials about ADUs and about home sharing and things like that we can put out. I am saying out loud that the ADU portion of the website will go live, and we'll have materials on where that is. And some of them printed, some of what will be on the website printed out. It's all stuff that you've seen before. It's nothing new there. It's just actually putting it on the website and clicking live. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of start engaging with the public to frame the conversation around housing, and housing diversity, housing choice, in Jericho, and to start to get a feeling for where people are at in this conversation, the kinds of things that they want to see, the kinds of ideas that they have, the concerns that they have. And this will be start of what we then do on March 14th, which is the town plan work session on the housing portion of the town plan with the planning commission. So
That's-
one
That's the
idea,
one that's our joint meeting, right? We're
correct.
meeting jointly, yeah.
So one idea that has been kicked around is there's a fear about both what diverse housing looks like and is going to be. There's a real fear that we're going to turn into a Williston or a Winooski. And there's also a fear of the kinds of people that want to rent affordable housing, and there's a lot of fear and a lot of preconceived ideas about what our vision is when we talk about housing and growth in Jericho. And so I want to replace some of those fears with what our actual vision is. And so one idea for doing that is going through, Stacy's been great about kind of recording all of the people seeking rental or housing in Jericho, and saying like, hey, I've got a job as a teacher at Richmond and I need a rental until I can get whatever. Or hey, the housing market is so tight, but my family really wants to move to Jericho. If anyone knows of anything, please reach out to us directly. So connecting some of those individual stories of the people who are wanting to move here with images of maybe what, hey, this duplex would be a perfect fit for this family that's looking for their first home, or hey, this ADU would be an excellent place for this Richmond teacher to stay for the 6-month lease that she needs, or whatever, to kind of both personalize who the people are who are looking to move to Jericho with stuff that everyone who's walking through that door has seen, because it's all been on our front porch forums, with some clear images of the kinds of housing that we're talking about that isn't big and scary and not housing that doesn't fit with the scale of Jericho.
A lot of dogs. I know.
Dogs.
Almost everyone mentioned a dog.
It is hard to find rental when you have a dog.
It is.
I can remember those days. But anyway, so I want to open the floor to other people. I've been thinking about this for a little bit, but we have this opportunity. Town meeting to start the conversation. What should we
It might be interesting to. I don't know if Zillow would be the place to go, but to look at a number of existing properties in Jericho. Chuck's house would be an example of here's what multifamily housing can look like. It doesn't have to look like Taft Corners. It doesn't have to look like Lang Farm. It can look like this. One of the frequent comments in the last two planning commission questions of the month that came out were, we don't want to look like Lang Farm. We don't want to look like Williston. We don't want to look like Essex. And that's those. And if you travel around the country, every single one of those buildings looks the same. It's the metal and brick siding. It's the ones that are down on Burlington on Lake, and they're not bad individually, but everywhere you go,
There's a lot of houses in America that look like yours too.
there
I
are.
mean,
Anytime
your
you
house
have,
isn't
like,
all
a
that unique.
One thing, it's weird.
A lot of everything.
Yeah.
I'd like, I just want to point out that, I don't think it costs a lot more to make a house look somewhat interesting. Like I look at those square apartments in Woodson, and it looks like 1954 Soviet architecture that made some cast concrete apartments. I mean, it just, and I saw that when I lived in California. It just seems like you wouldn't have to do a lot to just make them look a little less, I don't know, dystopian or something like that.
But again, so my suggestion is let's take pictures of rental units, affordable type housing in Jericho, and show people this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about these other ones.
So
Which-
I just have a real quick question. Can we take pictures of somebody's house in Jericho? Because there are a lot of examples of really nice small houses, especially if you go along Plains Road there. Is that okay?
Google does.
What?
They're on Google Earth, they're on Google Street View.
Okay, so we don't have to say this is so-and-so's house, but we can show the picture of the house and say this is a house in Jericho and this is what would be an example of it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I wanna know.
I know.
I,
feel super great about that.
yeah, I think we can, but I think it is worth talking
worth getting
about.
Asking permission.
Ask
One thing
their-
to like
ask permission.
take a picture of like the complex of condos or something like off of Starboard, you know, there's just like that little bit of duplexes in there and it's like all wooden and cute and everything. And, but it wouldn't be like this guy's house, you know, I don't know, that feels a little personal.
Mhm.
They might be proud of it, maybe they
Well,
want to share
sure.
it with us.
And if they do, that's great.
Yeah.
But I feel like
I'd
a
be
heads
little-
up might
I'd
be
a little
nice.
Cautious about promising nothing's gonna change. I mean.
True.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We have pursued a radical planning laws for the last 50 years, controlling where people live. We have, you know, to now say that we are going to correct some of that stuff and you're not going to notice, I think is really kind of a false promise. Things are going to change. And even if you were to read the town plan contemplates that things are going to change. Even the old one contemplates that things are going to change. And I think sort of reinforce, you know, sort of
Mhm.
saying, well, we're going to work around all this stuff and be promising people that nothing's going to change, I think we need to be saying that things, you know, that things do need to change. You know, and I don't know if the town meeting is the time, but I think one thing that I have found helpful is when I explain to someone what they might be able to do with their property, they're in favor of doing it. You know, maybe adding, like, you know, it's now legal. They made it legal now for you to, I was just talking to a woman this afternoon who has a house in the middle of 1 acre in the quarter acre zone. I said, you know what, you could add a duplex right there. You could do this and have someone help pay the taxes and your son could build it. You know, she had no idea. And I think that's a way of sort of illustrating what's possible, I guess, without promising. We simply can't promise people that nothing's going to change
Mhm.
because
But is that really change though, Chuck? I think if people are concerned about change, when I talk to people, they're worried about those 3-4 story buildings, you know, like, you know, if you go by the seashore, you know, there'll be some piece of wetland and someone will build a house that looks like an old castle tower because that's what they can. They'll make it 4 stories high. So, I mean, I think that's the change that people are worried about as opposed to adding another house on a lot of land or a duplex or something like that.
And we need to say, like, what right do you have? To tell people how, really how they should live. I took a grande dame from Jericho around and I showed her a 7-plex that's on Woodland Road that I love very much. And I went down, we sort of looked at it, and on the end of the building, there's a rack with canoes and kayaks. And she said, ooh, they have canoes. It was almost like people who are living in a condo are like different people.
Mm.
And I think that's how people see that when they look at housing that doesn't look like theirs. And what we're really saying is, I don't want those people.
Mhm.
That's what they're saying.
I think, but I keep coming back to the thing of some multi-story thing, because if let's say I bought a house and I've got a little simple house and I've seen this near the seashore where we go rent. And then somebody comes in because they have the money and they build some gigantic reconstruction of an antebellum mansion plantation house that totally blocks out their view of their little 1,200 square foot cottage from the water. So the thing is, if I've got my little house and I can see part of the mountain and someone comes in with all their money and says, well, I'm sorry, I'm building a 3-story monstrosity. I think that's what people are concerned about.
We can talk about worse. Yes, we can imagine all kinds of worst scenarios. And my neighborhood opposed a duplex that was like 1,800 square feet to be built next to me. I mean, that's where people are. And I think the saying that, okay, we're gonna think about housing now, and immediately going to like the worst example that people can think, of. And the real issue is who lives in them. It's not what it looks like.
So
Yeah, I don't, okay.
again, going back to where we started, the surveys from the town have been pretty vocal that Cap Corner, Essex, Lang Farm is not what people feel fits in the character of Jericho. Whether that's appropriate or not, that is the sentiment that comes across. We, on the Affordable Housing Committee, are sitting here because we believe Jericho needs more income diverse and a wider range of housing. We're not going to be successful if the dominant paradigm of what that looks like is Lang Farm, Half Corners, or any of those. We will be successful if the dominant paradigm looks like Cathedral Square, looks like Starboard, looks like Meadow Lane, where it's a couple of condos that are there, one's on Raceway. That's what people see. And by demonstrating this is what we are proposing, as opposed to the view in their head, I believe we will get more engagement, more participation, and more support. And that's what we need to have here. We need to have the town of Jericho saying, I don't mind if you build a 3-unit condo in my neighborhood. I do mind if you build a 3-story metal and brick framed piece that looks like it was dropped out of the industrial engineering program somewhere.
Mhm.
That is what the town said to us. So if we can use the forum of the town meeting to help reframe that into a more Jericho friendly way, we will have, I believe, achieved a goal. I won't be here for the town meeting because I'm going to be on a plane, so I'll let you fight over how you handle that, but that would be my suggestion. That is my suggestion.
Are
Yeah.
there, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I'm just wondering if there are like elements of this that the town that would be concerned are like voting on? Or is it like, like
Yeah.
people who are complaining about housing, like what power do they have other than we're afraid to push them out of their comfort zone?
So we had a planning commission voted and approved a set of new regulations for the commercial district right down there.
Uh-huh.
It was opposed by a segment of the population. They've been approved by the select board. that segment of the population got a petition, got enough signatures on it to put the whole thing up to a vote and had it
Okay.
cast out.
Okay.
So yes, long answer, yeah. If
Okay.
they don't like it, they have the
Yeah.
power and the people to do it.
Mhm. That's upsetting.
And, well,
Well, again, I was just going to say, it goes back to the right of private property, which starts way back with the Constitution and English common law. And the thing is, if you own property and somebody tries to come and do something that enough people think is impinging on their property rights, then it's all in our legal basis that they can complain about it. So that's like what Eric is saying, is if you convince them that what you're not going to do is do something alarming to their property, then that's.
well, and I also think that there is a, you know, the housing problem. There's a lot of, we need to approach it from a lot of different ways, and we need to bring a lot of different people to the table in order to address it. There's not just one right way to address it, and there is not just one right entity to fix it. And so, yes, town hall and government is going to play a role. Nonprofit community development organizations are going to play a role. Local contractors and developers and for-profit developers gonna play a role, and the community is gonna play a role too. Making decisions to put a duplex in your backyard and do kind of this gentle infill stuff is gonna require the community kind of getting on board, seeing how more housing benefits not just the people who get to move into that house, but the community at large. And so we do need to get buy-in, and we do want to invite everyone to the table to talk about this. What, just because you know better than anyone the kinds of stuff that have been coming across Front Porch Forum, is there anything that you want to highlight, or anything that can kind of?
Well, I was kind of collecting the numbers after I collected all of the entries. And what was surprising to me was the amount of single adults or couples that were trying to find like a 1 or 2 bedroom place to rent, like young professionals that were like trying to move into the area, you know, and it was a lot. And I mean, this is just people that are using this forum, not like looking for, you know, homes to purchase necessarily, but there were many more examples of that than, you know, families. And then on the flip side, you know, what was listed for available rentals, very, very few.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it
A
speaks
lot
to
of them have
like,
some urgency to them too.
yeah, or like, yeah, I'm taking this job and I can, you know,
Or I want to keep my kid in the school system.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's probably, I don't want to deflate or lessen.
No,
the
no,
importance
don't
of it,
worry.
But I do wonder,
Mhm.
how many other town front porch forums did they post that same message on?
Well, yes, but some of them are, like, a lot of them were saying we want to be in this town, or like in this town or this town, you know, and they are
School
posting in
district.
Richmond, they're posting in Jericho, they're posting in Underhill. You know,
You can't
so
post it in other towns.
Yes, you can.
many of them were like, my friend is asking from, you know, they're
Yeah.
relocating to Vermont, and it's just like this adult nurse who just wants a 1-bedroom apartment
You
or
can
whatever.
post
Or
it like
they're,
your town, the town next door. It's not.
yeah, I mean, it could be that they're posting everywhere. But
That's the question around. I mean, and yes, in a sense, you can't post in something about your town, but no one's checking what town you're in when you sign up for it. So you
but
can.
does it matter?
Yeah,
Well, it does, because if you have one person posting in 15 towns,
what makes
and they
you
all
think
think
that,
it's a
though?
different person, you have what looks like
Oh,
a much
yeah.
market that is right there. So
What makes you think though that maybe people aren't, like, that demographic isn't interested?
I think the demographic is interested in a house.
This
Full
all
stop.
these examples though, I mean, read them. There
I
are,
read
you
them,
know,
yeah,
like,
there are
yeah,
some interesting
and-
stories.
but I'm talking about, like, people are looking for rentals, they're looking for 1 to 2 bedrooms, there are like 13 inquiries for a 1 to 2 bedroom place.
Yep.
You know, so I don't think it's
And on the
like,
flip side, and it's a small sample size, but many months ago, reached out to a couple of the folks who were posting on Front Porch Forum that they had an ADU or 1 or 2 bedroom
Mhm.
rental. And I followed up with them to say, hey, did you find someone? How did it go? And they said, oh, it filled in less than a week. I had too many applicants. Like there's,
yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt that there.
No, I'm not doubting there's demand. There's clearly demand. As a researcher who studies numbers and studies how people collect and use data, you know this too. Multiple inputs don't necessarily mean that they are coming from different sources.
But all
So
those
you think
people-
these
all those
different
people are looking
people
in Jericho.
are
But
the
are
same
they only
person?
looking at Jericho?
It does, I don't
I
think
just
it's,
think it
I don't
matters.
think it
Yeah.
matters.
The demand is there.
People looking to
and
buy a house are looking in other towns too.
The demand is there, and what we're looking for is an example, an example profile that puts not a face literally, but puts a person's story to replace the meth head fears that were in the responses to the question of the month. And I think that's useful, but maybe not, maybe.
I think the
maybe there's a
stories are
different
really
way to
useful
go.
because I think we read them because we're interested. I don't read there's a whole lot that I just don't read because I'm not interested. I read it
Mhm.
because I think there's a lot of people that just skim right through them. And I think a presentation of the stories and the ask, just a montage. It is also something that would be useful and you can use it again other places. I mean, it's not a one-time thing. I think it's just a compelling, explains the need. People they're getting a cider and a donut, they're walking through. I mean, we're not gonna have,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
So two other things to drop on the group. One,
Work on it with you if you want.
any kinds of prompts, kind of like the questions of the month, but any prompts that we might want to have on hand, either on a poster board or something for folks who do want to engage in discussion or may want to leave. I think I'm gonna talking to Susan today about having a couple of hard copies of your question of the month that people can fill out there and then funnel back to David and Sabina to include in their analysis. So any kind of prompts that we might want to have in our back pocket for conversations, and any other pieces of information or resources that we want to have on hand to share with people or to communicate.
I think a really clear description of what people can do with an ADU. And let's call it a mother-in-law apartment or something like that. It's like you can now do. We used to have the most restrictive ADU laws in Vermont. Other towns might have it, but we had the most restrictive possible. We now have extremely flexible by town policy promoted by the select board, and here's what you can do. I mean, you can build a bigger house than yours and call it an ADU. Make your house the ADU. I mean, there's things like, hey, out there, have you thought about this? Have someone else pay your taxes. I mean, just promote that because it's consistent with the website going up. I think.
Bernie, I see your hand. I'll get to you in just 1 second. Wayne, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say to follow on from Chuck is, you do have the website. Maybe we could take a screenshot of one of the pages and take it down to Office Depot or someplace and blow it up to a poster size. So there might be 3 or 4 of them on the wall that are like, 2 by 3 or 3 by 4 that somebody could look at very easily and say, very interesting.
Cool. Anything else? Prompts or information we want to, or resources that we want to have on hand for folks? I'm thinking about,
I think a big blow up of the town of this.
yeah, actually, I think that's a great idea. Bernie, go ahead.
Maybe it's included in what you said, but maybe have mention of the money that the state is offering for ADUs or that type of bill, was up to 30K or something. That might be a little piece of candy to go with what Chuck's saying.
Yeah,
From a standpoint of a little bit of an outsider here, what I constantly struggle with, and I would hope that you would consider being prepared to talk to people about, is the in-between stuff. I mean, there's a talk about the demand side, which I feel like a lot of people get. I don't know if a substantial amount, but it seems like some people get the demand side. And then there's the other side of not wanting it to look like whatever, some picture that they have in their mind. So you're trying to decide how to address those two ends, right? To me, the struggle comes with whichever end you talk to, whether it be convincing people that there's a demand that we need more diverse people in Jericho, or whether you're addressing that we're going to have housing that doesn't look like Williston. Once you get people there, I think the struggle, at least for me, is the middle part. And the middle part is, as you've already talked about, the infrastructure. How's the marketing going to, the marketing forces, how are they going to be deflected enough to actually build that kind of house? I'm not asking you for an answer. I'm just saying that's where I think the discussion comes. And if you're prepared to talk to that, I think that's where the crux of the discussion is going to get to after you get off the outsides. So I think the outsides, I feel like there's a lot of people that are there with you. It's the middle part that says, how do you actually make it happen? And where's it going to be? Is there going to be infrastructure? For example, the water question, I've yet to hear anybody answer the fire chief's comment to me. And I've heard him say it publicly, his concern about water for fire today, not when there's 30 more houses built. There's probably an answer to that, but I haven't heard anybody give him, or at least give me that answer. I've heard people say, I'm having to re-drill my well. I don't know if there's a correlation between, why they're having to drill. Maybe it's because we haven't had as much water, but I think that we ought to be able to, we should be prepared to answer those kinds of questions.
no, I think that's good, Bernie.
Yeah, what would be nice to share with that are sort of the examples of, say, the tiny houses that are available, or that article from New York Times that I sent out with, here are these literally prefab houses that you can stack up in your backyard, and that are under $100,000 to build, 600, 800 square feet, 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, bathroom, everything else. And making people aware, to Bernie's point, that, okay, I really want to do this. What's it going to cost? Where am I going to put it? How do I hook it up to my water and sewer or wherever else I have? Here are some examples of what can be done at more reasonable costs.
First, we need to make it legal.
It is.
You're thinking as like ADU kind of like, yeah.
Or actually, there's nothing that I know of in the Vermont or in the Jericho thing, rules that say you can't have a site assembled house. It doesn't have to be a stick built. It could be something that comes off the back of a truck and fold, boom, you're done. As long as you got water, sewer, and meet all the sanitary requirements, you're good.
Right, but the way the zoning works right now is you need like a 200,000 acre lot. And where there's land available. I mean, I love the idea. I'm just saying, first you have to make it possible.
There was a friend of
And the
mine.
blue's all 3 acre zoning. And you need conditional use to be able to do anything more than a duplex. And if people don't like something stacked up in Williston, they're sure not going to like it in the red zone.
Well, you're talking about a prefab house, right?
Yeah.
Are you talking about a prefab house? Because I had a friend that built one in like 1991 over in Foothills. And everyone was upset when they saw it come in on the trucks, but then when they realized it was going to be a house and, but, it ended up, it was like, I don't know, 2,000 square feet. And when it was done, you didn't know that it wasn't stick built. I assume that's what,
I get it. It looks like mine.
but
Yeah, we
I
got
assume
one in
that's what
my-
It
Eric,
looks like normal people.
Yeah, we've got one in my neighborhood it came in on a truck and.
Yeah.
You.
I
two
don't
up-
know.
The one is a cul-de-sac, that borders up on Orr Road,
Oh, yeah, okay.
their driveways on Orr Road.
Yep.
It was that was,
No kidding.
So, anything else before I close out this topic? So you're not gonna be around.
I'm not, but I'm a big fan of showing examples of what. Kind of housing we're talking about,
Okay.
it's not scary.
Are you
We can
around?
bring lollipops.
Sorry, are you around?
I am, actually Tuesdays are good for me in general, so I'm happy to help.
Okay. And are you're the keeper of the front porch forum.
Currently,
Yes.
I
Okay.
mean, it's
and
all
then,
online if you want to look at it.
Richard, are you around on that
I-
Tuesday?
I should be, yeah.
Okay, Wayne, what are you?
Tuesday's a work day for me and I'm getting beat up a lot, on this project I'm on.
You
But,
give me
what I-
names and I will take care of them, Wayne. No one beats up Wayne.
I tell you, she's tough. She probably knows kung fu. But anyways, the thing is that if you wanted to get some website things, and I could see about trying to blow them up and make posters from the pages from the website.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna see too what the town can do for us here.
Okay,
I mean, the posters that you all had for, that the planning commission had for the kickoff meeting were just printed. I mean, they weren't anything fancy, but they were printed here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, just upstairs.
Okay, so I will,
you're large.
they were
No,
like
they were like-
legal size,
Double legal size, I think.
double legal size.
I think you want.
Yeah. I'm thinking, yeah,
Is
but you-
anyone really excited about the prospect of making some visuals?
I could help with the posters.
Okay. All right, I will.
I
let-
can help with photographs of
Yeah,
existing
I
houses.
can,
Okay, we'll organize some of this offline, but I will be prodding each and every one of you to contribute in some way, shape or form. Let me just write down which one of you, Stacy, Richard, Chuck, are you around for town meeting?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think we should be realistic about what the potential is. I mean, we really are. We're in between the cider and the donuts during a couple of
Yeah.
weeks. Yeah.
yeah, but I do think it's worth, I don't think it'll take much, but I do think it's worth having,
Absolutely.
A couple of-
And if it
one or
forces
two
us
good
to produce
posters.
materials that are useful in other situations.
that's exactly what yep.
Should we have a little box for people's private comments?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like in health class, so you can be anonymous and ask your embarrassing questions. Okay, I'm
Maybe it'd
gonna,
be nice to have on that line. Sort of, what can you do to support affordable housing in
Ooh,
Jericho?
I like that goal. That's good. Mhm, mhm.
And then just slip it in, you don't give us any name, just.
Yeah.
Write it down and put it in there.
and also we can
Questions and
have
support.
some suggestions for them to consider along the lines of
I want
what
to
you can
build
do
an
with your
ADU.
ADU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what you
yeah, it'd be
can
nice to have some
with your
images
property.
of ADUs along with all the information too. So many different ones.
Okay, I don't want to close this out. Is there anything else? We are surprisingly on schedule, folks. So proud of us. Okay. Next up, 8:47. I wanted to do just a planning commission update. the last meeting last week was on land use, and I thought it was just a really, David White is the consultant. I thought that the presentation that he gave was really useful. In particular, he had a lot of different maps that like highlighted different areas, and so a lot of the questions that you've had, Wayne, about soils. I don't know. I thought it was a super useful presentation. So if you haven't seen it, I think it's worth catching it on either YouTube or the Mount Mansfield CCTV website. Anything, Eric, from that meeting, affordable housing related, that should kind of be on our radar, that
a lot of talk was about land use and where the densities were, and sort of getting into some of the details of what are some of the costs and the impacts of getting some development where we wanted to, straightening that out. There were some suggestions about extending some of the village center boundaries to go a little bit further. One of the presentation ideas was to take the Jericho Center village center development and extend it down Brown's Trace Road to the school. Another suggestion was to create a more higher density area around the school, almost like a little hamlet through there. As an idea that was tossed around briefly. I'm not saying it was going to go anywhere, just something that came up. A suggestion also from David that the space between the triangle between Orr Road, Packard, and Brown's Trace, which is currently zoned rural residential, be rezoned for village growth, which would go from 3 acres to 1 acre. Those are some of the basic, where do we want change to the existing zoning districts, and how do we want that change to come about? Some discussion also about, can a multi-unit development, if it's one structure, be counted as a PUD? One structure on a lot, 2-unit structures and so on. Those are the main things that I took notes of. And density is the big issue all the way through. Where do we go with density? Where is it appropriate? Where is it not appropriate? And one of the other things that sort of stands out to me is that I think, Chuck's talking about 70% of the acreage in Jericho. I think it's about 35% of Jericho is the range. And we can't do anything with that. And another,
The 70, I took the range out before doing that calculation.
Okay.
Yeah.
but of what's out of there, big, like 70% of it is either forestry, natural habitat, protected by wildlife, or some other state designation restriction of what can go in there. So we only have about 30% of the town's land area that is suitable for any kind of density development. It's not as little as it seems. It's actually quite a lot of land. It's everything from here, the riverside, from here to the high school, and then up to Jericho Corners. It's
Still excluded, 117 is not included. 117 is still zone 10 acres.
And that's something that did come up, was the idea that both 117 and Brown's Trace, where they border on Richmond, are, I think it's 3 or 10 acres. I think Jericho side is 3 acres there. The Richmond side is like half-acre zoning. So you cross the line and it's a completely different zone. So there was a suggestion that when we are doing our zoning and we're going through it, that we look at what are the neighboring abutting towns doing, because if they're 1/4 acre zone and crossing with 3 acres, maybe we should mirror that and sort of.
West Bolton is bigger than Jericho Center, and we have 10 acres up against their 2 acres and about to go small.
Yeah, and I think your point about making sure that we have a blow up of that map, I think is really helpful for, I know before.
All kinds of meetings.
Yes.
I mean, we should have a big blow up with, maybe, yeah.
Just leave it.
Wait a minute, he can do it. a big blow up with a little varnish on it. You know, you can roll it up, put rubber bands on it, and it looks nice, like whatever meeting you go to.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that idea, but I would. I like it very much. I would include on that. At least the first. Half mile into all of our neighboring towns for what are they zoning,
Mhm.
which would highlight the Richmond area, which would highlight.
Mhm.
He's walking up into the clouds.
Bert, because of your background, it looked like you were walking up into the sky.
I think that's
That's a good idea.
That's a really, I mean, right on the border, you cross Jericho on Route 117. And you enter in that dense group of fourplexes just on the other side of the entrance where the ring road comes into 117. To make that next right, there's an enormous complex of fourplexes in there that borders Jericho on 117 is zone. 117 is zone 10 acres because Red Martin lived in the Chittenden house and Don Fay lived in Don Fay's house. That's why it's 10 acres. And it really doesn't make any sense.
The other thing, planning commission wise, so as far as zoning regs go, I think, Frederica was interested on being on a zoning kind of task force to work alongside with some folks from the planning commission to look at our zoning regs. Chuck, I think you may be interested in joining that as well. I think that what will happen is the planning commission may start to look at form-based code first, which is the Riverside area. So I think they're going to start with that, which I think we will be at the table. But while they're focusing their attention on form-based code, what I'm hoping is that Chuck and Frederica and all of us can be looking at the regs and seeing kind of prioritizing two things. One is there's some low-hanging fruit that we can easily put together in a quick amendment package. And then two, looking at a larger set of zoning amendments and trying to do some of the legwork ahead of time to set up what are the amendments that we'd really like to propose in a package to help get this target goal resolution actionable. But the planning commission probably won't have the bandwidth to tackle that larger project until at least 6 months, if not a year out from now, but there's no reason that we can't start looking at that so that we can kind of prioritize.
But since we're doing the town plan on the planning commission and not zoning regs right now, it actually is the right time for Affordable Housing Committee to contribute to the town plan for the goals and objectives as we just talked about. But also around land use for where should we try to concentrate or make affordable housing more affordable, more doable. And in meeting with the goals of the town for compact village development. And as an affordable housing committee, we can say these are what we believe will contribute to increased housing stock. And with diverse income capabilities in it, and once it's in the town plan of something we want, zoning then will be done to enact and make that possible. So certainly we should contribute in that. Here's where we on the Affordable Housing Committee think there are opportunities. Here's things that we on the Affordable Housing Committee think the town should be doing to support this goal as part of the town plan itself. So beyond just here's the objectives, but now here's the practical, here's the practical tools that we would use to get there. Again, we're not going to build anything, but we have to set the stage so that a person who will build or an entity that will build can do it.
Yeah. All right.
So, SJ, I just have a quick question. What
Yeah.
was did you say there was form-based codes that they wanted to look at for Riverside? I just want to make sure I got the notes right.
Yes,
Yep.
yep. Form-based code.
Form, and that's related to what now, the coverage, lot coverage type things, or?
Type of building design, minimum height, minimum open space.
Acceptable occupations for residents.
I don't think that's in there, but
It's illegal to make items for sale in,
We're not going
well,
there.
that's what it
yeah.
does.
basically says if it's a two-story building, here's the roof height you have to have, here's the roof angle, here's the number of
Okay.
windows and doors and basic structure and what it looks like, and there are some examples of what that might look like in practice.
And you're not odd big birdhouses or doll houses for sale.
What about custom tree houses?
Huh?
What about custom tree houses? I see that on TV.
I want one of those one day. Okay, I'm moving on to other business. It's 8:58. We were on schedule, now we're not. I've got 2 liaisons and I'm getting us to the end of this agenda. Don't close it. Other
So.
Jericho Energy Task Force. I would love if somebody would just keep an eye on the work that they're doing. They're doing a lot of programming around things like how to efficiently heat your home, for example, or a lot of the things that we've talked about in terms of making it more affordable for folks to live in Jericho, and some of those kinds of education programs. If someone is willing to just kind of keep an eye on their agendas and see if there are any programs that we want to either support or help promote, or projects that we want to do jointly with them. Similarly, I'd love to have another individual keep an eye on the conservation committee for commission. Thank you. For the same reason, but also I think, especially after our land use conversation, but this comes up a lot, that conservation and housing need to be at the table together if we're going to strategically plan for how we're going to make
Yeah,
this.
I think that's a
housing
good, we should engage with them on the zoning changes.
So I think if we can have one committee member who can either be a liaison or just informally participate in their meetings and keep tabs on the kinds of things that they're working on, and finding opportunities for us to work together. Hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll have a couple of maybe a joint meeting with the Conservation Commission to introduce each other and have a speaker that speaks to both of our work. Okay, things to mark on your calendar. Just know April is Fair Housing Month. I don't know if we're going to do anything for that or not, but I'm saying it out loud right now. You all know about the March meeting. March 14th is the dual meeting. The calendar of work sessions for the Planning Commission, the dates have now been finalized, I think. So March 14th is housing. April 18th is their working session on the local economy. May 3rd is the
So what
date.
was the second one?
April 18th is local economy. May 3rd is the big one that I would like anyone who is around and available to try to attend. This is their community forum that will be at the high school at 6:30 to 8:30. This should be a large event with kind of food and drinks and breakout groups and Post-it notes on a board and
That was the 2nd or the 16th?
let's
May
see.
3rd.
May
May
3rd.
3rd is the community forum.
What time was it? 6 to 8?
6:30 to 8:30.
May 3rd, Wednesday. Damn.
And then there will be another one on June 6th. About infrastructure. And then also kind of bringing everything together from all of the work sessions and from the community forum. That'll be a kind of a big work meeting for planning commission, but that I think is where they'll be talking a lot about infrastructure, because that'll connect all of the different things. So just have those dates on your calendar, and especially the May 3rd. If anyone's interested, the range is doing tours on February 22nd. If you haven't had an opportunity to take a tour of the range, February 22nd is your opportunity.
There's a lot going on.
That's what I heard.
So the big planning forum is before infrastructure.
Yep. I would take a motion to adjourn at 9:03. Stacy beat you to it. Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you. So nice to have you, Bernie.